Welcome to our chapter presentation. This is chapter 34, Language Learning Strategies and Styles. This presentation is by Alejandra, April, Diana, and Madison. Here we start with our journal prompt. Cels Murcia et al. 2014 writes, learners need to pay attention and notice language if they wish to learn a language. With this being said, I want to go ahead and reflect on various learner strategies and styles discussed in this chapter. Think of a time when you felt particularly successful or challenged in your learning journey. What specific strategies, whether consciously or unconsciously applied, did you use, or how did your preferred learning style contribute to your progress? So take a moment to think about that. That's a journal prompt. And we're going to go ahead and move into the presentation. We're going to start with language strategies. There are several different strategies that can be employed to assist with second language acquisition, like verifying, clarifying, deducing meanings from explicit explanations in text, making associations, inferring meaning from context, or linking prior knowledge when transferring from a second language to a third language. Successful language outcomes are produced by the learner's knowledge of the L2 language and their ability to plan, ask questions, and make associations. Remember, prioritize distinguish main ideas from details, monitor progress, reflect on successes, and shift their approaches to language learning or use. We have the learner strategies. These are part of strategic competence and are strategically important when learning and using a second or a foreign language. Strategic competence refers to the information and structures in the both working and long-term memory, what the brain processing systems and language strategies are both thoughts, behaviors that are used by learners to regulate a second language acquisition. We have metacognitive strategies. These assist with mentally regulation actions or behaviors used in language acquisition. Then we have cognitive strategies. They are defined as doing behaviors such as learners employ to understand and remember or retrieve or use new information. We have social strategies. These include collaborative behaviors that foster positive interactions and relationships. We have affective strategies, which include the behaviors that allow learners to identify and adjust their feelings, beliefs, attitudes, and impulses. It is essential for language instructors to understand the importance of strategic competence as it controls how learners notice and understand language acquisition input. Essentially, how they organize the information. The strategic competence refers to strategies that learners employ consciously, deliberately, and unconsciously, and automatically. Learners refer how they employ their learning strategies. These differences appear across different domains. Learners also vary in their modes of perceiving, remembering, organizing, processing, and representing information. Learner preferences are consist of strategic clusterings, and these are known as the learner cognitive styles. Strategic clusterings paired with the learner's affect, personality traits, and motivational levels are known as learner styles. So we're going to stop and think here. We're going to think, why is it important for language instructors to understand strategic competence? What are some ways that you can support different learning strategies, styles in the learning environment? So we're going to move on into learner styles. The exploration of successful language learning has revealed an intriguing connection between learners' achievements and their learning styles. Research have observed the learner's preference for engaging with information, listening, seeing, or doing can significantly influence their ability to acquire new language. We have three concepts of learning styles. We have the perceptual preference, the personality preference, and the processing preference. The perceptual preference, these are the preferences that can determine whether the learner can be more inclined to absorb information through listening, seeing, or doing things. For instance, a visual learner might find it easier to understand new vocabulary by reading the words rather than hearing them. The personality preference indicates to an extent in which learners embrace new experiences and their tendencies towards being introverted or extroverted. An introverted learner may be tasked with role play may experience discomfort, which could adversely affect their performance in language acquisition. We also have processing preference. In processing preference addresses how learners prefer to process information. Some learners focus on big pictures while others concentrate on specifics. For example, a learner with global-oriented style might prefer to grasp an overview of the lesson before delving into details. Here we have the common learner styles. So as teachers, we can create a more effective teaching strategies. Teachers can address diverse learning needs by varying instructional approaches, such as alternating between auditory, visual, kinesthetic. Educators should be mindful of their learning styles to avoid potential students' mismatches, which could lead to learning difficulties. While matching teaching methods to learner styles can be beneficial, encountering different styles, known as style stretching, can also be adventurous. By exposing students to learning tasks outside their preferred styles, they can develop adaptability, flexibility, ultimately enhancing their language success. So here we're going to stop and think and go into question number 2. What strategies can be implemented to identify your students' learning styles in the classroom? And how can you as a teacher create an inclusive environment that supports all learning styles? So take a moment to think about that. And we're going to move into research on strategic competence. Oxford 1990 presented research on when strategies should be taught explicitly and implicitly. Oxford 1990 referred to the terms indirect and direct, direct meaning strategies that directly impact learning, and indirect meaning strategies that indirectly support students' learning. The direct strategies found in the research are memory strategies, cognitive strategies, and compensation strategies. On the other hand, indirect strategies include metacognitive strategies, affective strategies, and social strategies. Oxford 2011 later created a model as seen on the on the right-hand side that demonstrates greater alignment with information processing. In this model, meta strategies are the guide to the learning behavior strategies. For example, metacognitive strategies guide cognitive strategies such as situation analysis. Meta-affective strategies help to regulate emotion and motivation, and social cultural interactive strategies guide interactions and communication between students and how they deal with the diversity. Overall, this classification of research served to inform students' awareness of strategy used treated as behaviors that aid development of the second language learning. Now we move into human information processing. So information processing is the progression of information being developed by the learner to being used fluently and automatically. The first stage of processing begins with input such as information processed through the ears, eyes, touch, that is momentarily stored in the sensory memory. It then moves to the short-term memory stage and then quickly shifted to the working memory. To begin processing the information in working memory, the brain is trying to connect similar information, grasping at associated strategies, retrieving strategies, and much more. Then, after understanding and rehearsing takes place, it moves to the long-term memory section that is divided into declarative and procedural or episodic memory. Of course, there are times when information can fall under the catering category, forgotten information, at any time as seen on the diagram. The process then continues when the working memory retrieves information from a long-term memory and then pushes information through the response preparation. Once in the response preparation stage, the information comes out of vectors such as our voice or hands, which simulates the output generation back into the universe. The human information processing is connected to SFL learning as it involves encoding, storing, and retrieving linguistic input, which turns enables learners to process new vocabulary, grammar, and phonological structures, all while developing automaticity and fluency through practice and meaningful interaction. Here we're going to move into question number 3. So take a moment to think. Has been lots of research done on learning strategies. How can this research be used to inform teaching and learning? And how does information processing relate to the second language learning? We're going to move into classroom applications. When considering classroom applications for teaching strategies, one, we must reflect how strategies awareness is promoted. Researchers such as Dornier propose four general goals for effective strategy instruction. The first goal is to raise learners' awareness and provide the rationale for strategy use. The second, the use for foreign language. Learning or contextual use. The second goal is to introduce the learners to new strategies and model their application. The third goal focuses on giving learning opportunities to practice using these strategies. And lastly, the fourth goal is to emphasize encouraging learners to reflect and share their experiences regarding effectiveness and strategies. Here we move into classroom application. And as research, Macara 2001 gives us examples of guidelines for classroom applications for teaching explicit strategies instructions. We start with task completion. Students are given a specific task which takes the form of selected response, limited production, or extended production with their work. This allows learners to engage actively with the material and apply their skills in the structure. Then is awareness raising. Students identify, reflect on the strategies they use to complete the task. This step encourages self-awareness and metacognition. Learners can share and compare their strategies with one another. Then we move into modeling. The teacher demonstrates a specific strategy, providing a clear example of the application. The teacher names the strategy, explains how and when to use it, and comments on its value, ensuring the students understand its purpose and relevance to their learning process. Then we move into practice. The students are given additional opportunities to complete the test that allows them to practice using a newly introduced strategy. Then is evaluation. Students evaluate the strategy based on the effectiveness and achieving the task and the personal comfort with using it. This reflective process helps them determine what strategy works best for the individual learning style. Then is extension. So learners are tasked with completing more complex activity that requires them to integrate the newly learned strategy with familiar ones. And lastly is final evaluation. Learners assess the overall effectiveness of the strategy after applying it to multiple tests. They reflect on how well the strategy supports their learning. The structure approach ensures that students not only learn strategies but also internalize and evaluate their effectiveness in fostering a strategic learning. Here we move into classroom applications and consider these key findings on strategy use, metacognition in classroom application. So strategy uses correlates with the learning success. The students uses the strategies differently based on the ability to making essential for teachers to incorporate both domain-specific and general strategies. The effective strategy used depends on efficiency rather than being inherently good or bad. The strategies help both problem solving and successful learning and becoming automatic with practice. Skilled learners use clusters of strategies, and flexibility in strategies use allows adaptation in different learning conditions. Then we have metacognition is essential. So metacognitive strategies helps regulate learning and teachers should explicitly integrate them into lessons. This encourages students to plan, reflect, compare, and questions, improves their strategic awareness, and teachers can support this by guiding students to set goals, monitor comprehension, evaluate their work, and assess strategy effectiveness. Reflection opportunities enhances learning and skill development. Lastly, cognitive flexibility. It is critical. Students need to broad a range of strategies to adapt different learning situations. Cognitive flexibility helps them apply strategies across contexts rather than relying on rigid approaches. Teachers can foster this by designing tasks that require multiple strategies and perspectives. Here we pose the last question. How do you design tasks in the classroom to promote strategic awareness and develop cognitive flexibility in your students? This concludes our presentation, and you will find the key vocabulary at the end, and the link will be posted on the presentation as well. Thank you.